This episode was actually filmed and edited quite some time ago, but I ended up taking the channel in a different direction and I never ended up actually uploading this video. But given the recent shift towards the roguelike genre, which a lot of those games are considered AA, I felt that this was actually the perfect time to release this video. So, just to make it clear for everyone involved, what would you consider the difference between AAA and AA gaming?
I would say the way they monetize the AAA these days, because if you take in account that Baldur's Gate is a AA game that verges almost into AAA market, but they're doing what, say, CD Projekt Red did in 2015, and they were saying, we'll leave the greed to someone else, and they released a game that works. It had some issues, but none that where it was game-breaking when you can't play the game. And they did not do any microtransactions at all. There's no store actively. The only store that they have is pumping up the basic version into Digital Deluxe, which they gifted to everyone who was involved into the early access, which is a $30 worth of money they just gave out to everyone who bought the game previously and helped them to develop it, which is a big step to me. Versus, say, I don't know, FIFA, which is not FIFA anymore, which is Football Club 2024, where it's a buggy mess all the time. It's old game, and it's full of microtransactions where you can't play online if you don't spend like hundreds of dollars on it, yet people do it anyway. So it's like that's the biggest, I would say.
Now, just for context, I don't want to go too into the sports game just because the previous episode was on this exact topic of microtransactions in sport games. If you haven't seen it yet, it's available currently on YouTube and Spotify. But in order to maintain this current topic, I just want to help clarify and maybe even show some differences between AA and AAA games. So I'm going to give you a combination of two different games, one AA and one AAA, and I want you to tell me which game is better and why. And as well, you could pull this back at me.
Okay, let's do it.
So the first one, you've already mentioned both of these games, Cyberpunk 2077 versus Baldur's Gate 3.
Ooh, it's a double-edged one because Cyberpunk, the way it was released 3 years ago, it was a buggy mess. I mean, the internet is full of video clips, especially from PS4 version, not so much PC, where it was just unplayable. The assets won't load. The crowd was just like, there's a World War III going on in the street and no one cares. Like, it's completely dead. Like, there's cars flipping and everything and no one seems to give a damn. And Baldur's Gate 3, I wouldn't call it perfect, but the amount of time and effort, and especially effort, that Larian Studios and Sven Vinke put into it, with all their panels from hell, listening to the community, getting involved the D&D fans, where they helped them to develop the game, and CD Projekt Red basically made a mess, and they used their good name after Witcher 3 especially, in their two expansions, the Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine especially, where they very gradually finished the story of Geralt, where they can't really go back to it anymore. And honestly, myself, when I played it and Geralt breaks the fourth wall, looks at you and says, "It's time to rest," I cried. It was really hard to let him go, especially after, like, I think 150 hours you have to put in a game to beat it. Really cried. And CD Projekt Red next game, Cyberpunk, where I finished it, I was like, okay.
It just didn't hold the same level of captivation as their previous project, I would assume.
That's too. Maybe it was because you were having too many expectations, and their marketing department was really great at like stoking the fires. Like, listen, it's gonna be the greatest game ever. You can trust us, right? We did Witcher 3, right? You can trust us. And what was released was bad. But that was
the biggest piece of
yes, yes. And versus right now, when 3 years later, when they come up with the patch 2.0 and the new expansion, I'm yet to try. I'm on my way to it because it really opens at the last act of the game, really. But even then, the update 2.0, this is how it should have released. This is where they should just really said 3 years ago, sorry, it's not ready. It will be ready 2 years from now or a year from now or something. You know, let the marketing department take that one.
Even if they put it in early access, if they did what Larian Studios did and said, hey, we're going to give you small slivers of the game at a time, play it this way, help us fix the bugs, we're going to give you a steep discount at this price. I mean, the game Hades did the exact same thing. It released in early access at the beginning, but you only typically had access to maybe part 1 and part 2 of the game. And this is another great AA game, Hades. But by the time they actually released the full game, which is when I actually bought into the game, it was a flawless game. It was $33, I believe, for this entire game, which is not expensive whatsoever. But it was something that was flawless. And why? Because they said, we're going to take your feedback. We're going to work with you. We're going to work with everybody who we could get involved. Yeah, maybe we're going to lose $10 per person who joins an early access. But by releasing a good product, instead of a polished turd, you got something good.
You got that one right. But then again, I would say Larian, it wasn't flawless. Like I said, Baldur's Gate 3 is far from flawless, especially on the release. They had to release it. But all the AAA studios, when they released it, saying, oh, like they were doing 3 years of early access. And the best comment I've heard from Skill Up, I think, it was like, well, what stops you from doing it? What stopped a lot of games that released this year to, going back, I think, to 90s where it was a shareware or demos like that were on CDs in every game magazine that came in that you could try. Be like, hey, do I like it or do I not? And if I don't, you don't. But what I think with early access development stage, what Larian did, what helps is to build up a community that would kind of be on your side, even if you release something a little bit less polished just for the sake of time. I mean, they just released the big patch right now, so the game released in early August, so it's close to end of 2 months. They released 2 big content patches, and they fixed a lot of bugs. But the Metacritic for the time, it was the best-rated PC game of all time until people start getting to Act 3, where it's the memory leaks were there. Just because you're getting into a city and there's actively, literally hundreds of NPCs just walking around, and you need to have a really good rig to process all of that, and people starting having issues, and that's when they ran to the
And then here's me, who's thinking to myself, maybe I'll play the game on Steam Deck when I'm on the treadmill, so doesn't sound like such a good idea anymore.
Right now, it might be just because they fixed it. When it released, the first act was flawless, just because there was hundreds of thousands of people helping them polish it, the content, the everything. The second act was great, my opinion. I didn't expect, it was kind of like in the first act they just were talking about it and think, oh, it's going to be 1 and 2, it's done. But it wasn't. And then the third act just kicks you in the gut.
This reminds me of, editing videos. Back when even when I edit my shorts or when I edit my other content, there's so much more effort and time placed on the beginning of the video, the hook, the introduction. And it's the same thing. Have you ever seen the drawings and the memes where it's drawing the horse, where you have 10 minutes to draw the 10 minutes, 1 minute, and 10 seconds.
And then the last part of the horse is literally just a stick figure with a...
Yes. So that's exactly what this sounds like to me, that the game developers already at the end are having this kind of issue because they're getting so much testing at the beginning and they're getting so much feedback. They're not getting that much stuff on other sections by comparison.
Yep. That's how it felt like. They did apologize for it, though. It's yeah, we know of the issues. We'll fix them. Here's a timeline where the patch is going to be. So they released the Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, where Divinity Original Sin was, I think they crowdfunded it through Kickstarter, and it was $300,000 that they got for it. And when they delivered, people were mind blown because, with the exception of Witcher 3 at the time, nothing could beat it, which spiraled I think it's what was the games? The Tyranny, I think. All the old school party RPGs that were long forgotten by that time, because I think the best that were Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights to some extent, because they were still following D&D structure, but then they were forgotten because they were not interested to anyone, or at least everyone thought so. And then Larian comes out and hey, guys, remember the good old party RPGs from early 90s? We got you. And then I was like, whoa, this is actually pretty cool. So, actually, I got one for you.
Okay.
I got one for you to compare. Battlefield Remastered versus Battlefield 2042. No, we decided to card it out. It's yours now.
I thought I had Tarkov DMZ.
Anyways, I threw it at you. Let's go.
Okay, so I've never been the biggest Battlefield fan to begin with. And I actually had bought BattleBit and then I actually refunded it because I also didn't really enjoy that.
You want me to take this one then?
However, here's the thing. I could tell because I played both of them on release and then I refunded both of them. But the difference is that Battlefield felt like a polished turd. See, I'm bringing it back to what I said earlier. BattleBit, I just didn't like the gameplay of because I've never been a huge Battlefield fan. However, I could tell that they actually put in real effort into the game. However, seeing as I think you have more of an opinion on that, I'm very interested in what you have to say.
BattleBit, I put in totally, I think, 35 to 40 hours in. And Battlefield 2042, I bought it only when I heard that Vince Zampella, the guy who created Titanfall 1 and 2, the guy who came up with Apex Legends, they're like, Vince, fix. Vince is like, yes, sir. Gets to fixing it and rolls out a roadmap, which I hate most times when the developer's like, here's a roadmap of what we're going to do. I mean, people will probably remember to this day the roadmap of Anthem, where it's like, oh yeah, it's in a 10-year adventure, we'll be fine, we'll fix it. It's in the graveyard. So no one wants to remember it, although it looked cool. Like,
Let me ask you a question. Would you consider Titanfall AA or AAA, like Titanfall 2?
It's a hidden gem that should have been AAA, but forevermore, even right now, with the current surge of players, just because EA is like, oh yeah, let's fix the game, it's a AA.
You would consider Titanfall a AA. Titanfall 2 versus the Call of Duty franchise versus the Battlefield franchise.
I actually recently, when they were re-promoting Titanfall, like, hey, listen, we patched the game and everything, and they were selling it for like $2. Sorry, $2.99 on Steam.
Wish I got into that deal.
I did so too. I got it. I played. Right now, I have like 3 hours, I think, on a multiplayer. It feels like a breath of fresh air, honestly. Even though it was forgotten and a lot of people had it hid away in a closet and like, oh yeah, that game is a buggy mess. Everyone loves the campaign versus, I would say, Call of Duty, what it's just same campaign, just different characters in it. Like, there's a lot of badooms and badashes going on, and then 3 hours later, 4 hours later, like, okay, where's the multiplayer? Here, they actually put some thought into the campaign, which I did about half of right now. And I'm looking to finish it at some point, maybe during winter times or soon. But I gotta say, right now, it feels like a breath of fresh air, and EA should have never dumped it the way they did. But then again, they released it into a window between Infinite Warfare and I think Red Dead Redemption 2, which ultimately
I think
just
it was a
interest.
Battlefield game.
Was it?
I don't think it was Red Dead Redemption, but they did release it at a bad time. Because I actually bought it when it came out. Or I didn't buy it when it came out. I think it came out, whenever it came out that year, I bought it on sale that year at Boxing Week. And I loved it. And I even played some of the multiplayer back then, and it was so good. And I have to say, the fact that they kind of spun it off into Apex Legends is good. Now, I'm not a huge Apex Legends fan.
Oh, I mean,
my Battle Royale of choice has always been Fortnite, especially with Zero Build. But I still respect Apex Legends. And if I could have bought Titanfall on PC for $2.99, I would have done it and I would play it.
I would say Apex Legends is the biggest middle finger that Vince Zampella could do to EA. Because they were saying, oh, there's no profit in the series, we're going to can it. Like, we don't want to do Titanfall 3 or anything. And he said, well, you know the story of Apex Legends, right? Vince Zampella and his division within EA were doing that in complete secret. They didn't tell anyone of it, and then that's why they released it so quick. There was no advertisement because EA didn't even know about it.
I remember the first way I heard about it is I think I saw Ninja or another big streamer streaming it one day, looking on Twitch. This was when I was doing my MBA. I'm being like, this game actually looks cool. And then I looked up, oh my God, it's released today. And I downloaded it right away.
Yep.
I even won my first game. It took me a couple of weeks to win a game of Fortnite, but Apex I won on the first days, and it was fun. It is a game that I feel like if you actually have a dedicated squad of friends, you probably could get a lot of enjoyment, but it just, I don't know. I never got into it myself, and I tried to a few times.
My issue with it is TTK, time to kill. That you have to be tracking perfectly in order to kill anyone because you dump a mag into a character and they don't die, they just run away. And you literally have to have a squad of dedicated friends that you make a call out and you just bamboozle someone with shots. Like one target, you just, all of three of you just shoot at him and kill him. Versus other battle royales, which is, you mentioned Fortnite, obviously Warzone, where you can actually do a lot of things yourself. You don't need help of your friends if you're playing in a squad to down someone. Apex Legends is like you really need to track your shots or be extremely good shot to play it. I like the style of it. I do like the visuals, but the actual gameplay is not for me. I like to be able to do things on my own. Even I would accept it if it was.
It's fun to show off. That's what it is. It's when I play squads or duos with my friends or trios on Fortnite. I like to be able to run off and take an entire squad on my own based on skill. Whereas with having a long time to kill, it's not possible. But while we're on the topic of time to kill, I got another great comparison for us to go over. Escape from Tarkov versus Call of Duty Warzone and Call of Duty DMZ.
Tarkov. Oh, my love, my hate, my everything. I started Tarkov back in beta patch 4.1, I believe. So it was some time ago. It was 2017, if I remember correctly. And that game, Time to Kill, completely revolves around your ability to shoot. I have my gripes with the game because they're portraying it as the most tactical game out there. You can they invented I would say the tag of gun porn, where you can literally create anything out of your gun and just put everything anywhere. You can create cursed builds.
One of my favorite things that my friend Ben and I used to do in Escape from Tarkov is you would go into factory and you would run an MP153.
Yeah.
And what we would do is you would stick 3 flashlights on the gun.
People did like
and
8.
you would literally you would literally be sending people down the tunnel to God because they just couldn't see anything.
That's basically what it was. Yes. But in terms of time to kill, if you're running the best gear, like the vest, everything, while people trying to shoot you in your chest, you don't die. You just tank like a boss and you run away or you kill him in return. Versus running like a PM and head eyes someone and all that gear is yours now. But it's hard to do, but it's doable. So TTK, it's a bit of double-edged sword in that game versus if you're really good, you can literally run the cheapest gun ever and earn money.
But I think that's also not a bad thing. It rewards skill. I mean, is it going to be easy to do that? No, but if you're the best player in the game and you could head eye someone with a PM pistol, you should be rewarded for that ability. However, double-edged sword at the same time, hacker problem.
It's always been there. It's always going to be in there just because they figure out the way how to make money, especially of very, very rare items like key cards for the labs, some keys for the doors, for the quests and all that. They figure out a way how to farm that and do that. And I don't know if a lot of audience seen the video called The Wiggle That Killed Tarkov that was released, I think, like 7 months ago at this point, that showed how bad is it. And that's where it kind of quit.
That was a great video because the guy literally was like, yeah, I'm going to see how many times. And obviously, from a statistical point of view, is it really that valid? Probably not. But in that one player's experience testing this out, it's definitely worth considering.
Yes, and well, still, he showed the issue that Battlestate were ignoring for far too long. They're saying, oh yeah, we're banning all this like hackers, but what hackers do just go buy another one. It's kind of like in their favor because they keep banning profiles and
they just make more money on the hackers buying new accounts.
Exactly.
They're making more money on the hacks than they are doing that because a lot of the hackers are probably also doing real world transactions to sell stuff.
Exactly. That's exactly why. Because there's some Joe that just came back from a job. He doesn't have like 8 hours to farm the Tarkov to find that key or just to enjoy his life. So he just wants to buy the gear off someone or like just go and buy it with real money. Like he doesn't have the time to farm. That's why they kind of like at some stage they banned the ability to go into raid with someone and them dropping expensive gear for you because it just falls under the ground.
Gear, I think it was gear you could do, but it was like keys. You could only drop so much money. There were certain things like that you could no longer drop because people were just doing real world transactions.
With it, yes. So talking about Darkov's TTK is that yes, it's a lot of it is skill based. I mean, I have my issues with it where you don't need to go into ADS mode, like looking down the sights. Everyone just shoots from the hip. But that's a different topic entirely. And you mentioned Call of Duty DMZ. I've decked over the last year maybe like 150 hours into that with a squad of friends we played every other net or so. And that game is just like COD, it's all meta. Like you have to go online, find a meta build, like which gun is best for DMZ, which gun is best for Warzone, because it differs in a lot of sense. It differs. What's played in DMZ rarely gets played on Warzone. But the Warzone, I would say if Tarkov looked at them, not as from the perspective of a competitor, but to get some ideas, they can learn something, especially from the big map, where you are an architect of what you want to do. Tarkov is very linear. You get in, you either go chase gunshots to find PvP,
Or you go loot.
or you go loot, or you do your quests, where you're trying to avoid the gunshots. Where DMZ, you can do everything. In a time that it's a raid, which is, an hour, you can do everything.
Not only that, you could extract if you want to early and do it. Like you could run in, do a fast quest, and get out. Or you could say, I'm just going on a loot run and see what happens.
Yeah.
You could literally pick and choose what you want to do. But my biggest issue, I guess more so for Warzone, because DMZ, it makes sense. It's an extraction shooter. But I don't like in Warzone custom loadouts. I think custom loadouts killed Battle Royale, in my opinion, because it defeats the purpose.
It defeated the purpose. Well, I think the first Warzone, when the custom loadout was costing, if memory serves, like $20,000, $25,000, and you literally had to go and find them and use whatever's on the ground for a good chunk of a match.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. But when they lowered it down, almost cut it in half just because streamers were crying, saying, oh my God, I can't play with my loadout. I have such a great loadout. I was like farming it in multiplayer for several nights and I can't use it. Boo hoo. That's what killed it because. And then they did the free loadouts at like minute whatever. They just free loadout drops, and you're like, well,
what's the point? It's Battle Royale is all about making do with what you have, and even the way Fortnite is now, I think it's a little too easy to get good weapons.
How so? Because I don't play Fortnite.
Fortnite, I always found back in the chapter 1 of Fortnite, you were kind of relying on what you had, but anything was viable. You could run a gray, which is the most common and weakest gun, and still beat someone who has the best one. But now there's too many easy ways to get high tier weapons that it just kind of, and it's very easy to get what you want specifically. So for example, there's now a gold system where you get gold bars and you could buy stuff on the maps. There's no loadouts, but I could go onto the map and let's say right now at this point of the game, so chapter 4 season 3, there is a gun called the twin mag, which is basically a single shot assault rifle that fast reloads once. And there's a certain NPC that always spawns in the same spot that for 400 of these bars sells the gold version of that gun. Now, because I play on mouse and keyboard, that gun is super valuable because I have much better aim than my friends who play on console. So I could just say every game I'm going to drop there and then farm gold bars so I never run out, and I could get that gold gun every single time without question. And that's just one way. There's also there's more ways to get rare weapons, whereas in the original days, you had to get lucky to find them. Most of the time, you were probably running greens and blues. Basically,
if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. Basically, I don't know if you ever played World of Warcraft, but they use the same color code system. So that's just an easy way to explain it. But if you're running a gray, you could still defeat somebody. A gray is not useless.
It's just going to take
skill. Well, basically, the difference in the original days between a green and a gray assault rifle was 1 damage per shot. But then once you had like the legendary, I think it was 30 versus 35. So it was one less shot to eliminate someone. So that's where it made a difference. But a green to a gray, the difference was minute. It was an incremental increase. It
I have
really
a
was.
question for you about Fortnite. Since you said you played in the old days versus now, I watched a stream of maybe half a year ago, thing on Twitch, and I saw like superhero jumps. I seen vehicles. I've seen. I think it was the map where there was a city center with little railing going on, and you can jump on it and rail. I was like, what? Like I remember trying Fortnite when it first came out, and it's like what 2015, 16 or something like that, and it was pretty cool. It was a little bit down to earth. There was no like great movement. I would say like fast movement anyway. You had to like basically sprint or just run. And if you're kind of behind on the ring, well, you basically killed yourself. Right now, you can jump in a car and still make the time to go into the ring. What do you think about that? Because it didn't feel like Fortnite.
So there's pros and cons, obviously, on both sides. So I'm not going to give any names because I don't want to get in trouble with Epic Games. But there actually are a couple of ways currently, right now, that you could go back and play classic Fortnite. Basically, private servers. I'm not going to give any names on the podcast because I don't want to get myself in trouble. But it exists. You could do it. And I actually played a couple of games of the old school Fortnite. And to be honest, while as humble as it was, you can't deny that the current version of the game, especially now that you have zero build as an option, is better. But even building now, yeah, you're going to face a sweat. The game has developed so much. But now there's other ways to deal with a sweaty builder. There's other ways to play the game. So, yeah, is faster always better? No, but I think in this case, it's not like, oh, I dropped on the corner of the map and the circle's on the other corner. I better spend half the game running. No, it's definitely more fun now where you could get in a car or there's other methods of moving around the map. It's just, it leads for a healthier game when you're not getting killed by an unfortunate circumstance out of your control. It's actually more about skill or about having proper positioning or playing, in a smart manner versus I dropped in the wrong spot. The game's over. Now, obviously, I'm always going to be nostalgic for those old days because that's when I started playing. I still use a lot of skins and cosmetics from those days because I'm fortunate enough that I started so early that now I could show off to people who didn't start playing that early because I have it.
You have a John Wick skin?
I have the original Reaper skin, yes.
Because to me, I think that was the hook and sinker for me. Like when I started to try it, is that John Wick 1 came out. I was older age. A lot of communities like, oh my god, this is like the coolest thing ever. And when you see John Wick and in Fortnite, like, whoa.
But now they have an official crossover John Wick and that original one. So there is a difference. I could show you pictures, but there is an actual difference. The proper crossover looks a little more like John Wick. They did the same thing with Black Widow. The original Black Widow skin in Fortnite, which I think is owned by less than 1% of all players. Yay, I have it. Go me. That skin, it's actually just one of the other skins, basically wearing a wig and the clothing. Then the second Black Widow skin, which came out later, actually looks more like Black Widow. But the first one, because it's so much more rare, I think is so much cooler. And just the rarity and scarcity still adds value in it. But just onto your point, I actually do still prefer the way it is. Now, I think sometimes in Fortnite they do too many crossovers. So, like, having too much anime-inspired things in the game, it's not balanced around that. But, so, like, right now, for example, at this point right now, there is stuff from My Hero Academia in the game, and there's stuff from Star Wars in the game. So you could literally use a Deku Smash and force push somebody. And I think that's a little too much. Like, take one of them out.
But that means a lot of kids not buying the skin and they're not making the money.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I mean, Ahsoka Tano is in the Battle Pass. And then you have all the anime skins in the shop. They're obviously making money on all these crossovers.
To me, I have I'd say an intimate issue with anime skins, especially in Call of Duty. 'Cause that's what kills kills it for me. Every time when new Call of Duty releases, they trying to show off, oh, look, it's so tactical. We got all these operators. It looks so cool. And to me, I play airsoft as one of my hobbies. To me, it's like, oh my God, I look at that. I was like, I want that because this looks cool. And then like half a year down the line, they like sneak in like
Halfway down the line, all of a sudden you're Homelander in
yeah,
Call of Duty.
exactly, like, or Spawn. Right now, I think the next Spawn. It's Lilith from Diablo 4. It says what was the angel's name? I forgot. Remember?
Tyrael?
No. From Diablo 4. Inarius. Inarius, Spawn, Lilith. And you're like, this is not Call of Duty anymore, because you see all the effects, the shooting effects, the tracers and everything. It becomes less modern tactical shooter, more into Fortnite.
Not only that, it's like you could have a squad and it's like Homelander, Snoop Dogg, Inarius,
and Nicki Minaj.
and then you have Ghost from Call of Duty.
I
And it's
still
just like,
laughed.
what the hell?
I still laughed when they introduced Nicki Minaj and she's running on all heels and like pink outfit, and like in a tactical game when you're trying to blend in with the environment.
This
so
is not made up. This is actually in the game.
Yes, guys, if you haven't seen it, if you don't play Call of Duty, just literally just go search bar it on Google.
We could add some B-roll into this just to show
yes,
people.
that, and it's just hilarious to me. That's why I kind of stopped playing it, because as soon as they start introducing like Snoop Dogs, the Homelanders, and whatever, it loses the feel to me. That's why I like, back to the previous topic of Tarkov. They don't do that. That's why a lot of people are playing it, because it positions itself as a mature tactical shooter, and it does not sway from that. Like, there's no gimmicky.
There's no
skins.
gimmicks or anything
Yes.
like that. It's everything that's in it is relative to the game. Yeah, you might have the blue hat, but the blue hat is something scavs wear. So if you're wearing that, you're hiding. There's a reason to do it. It's not just, I'm trying to look silly in the serious game. But I want to move back more into AAA versus AA, because I kind of think we've kind of veered off in its own path. Not that I think that's such a bad thing. Why do you think AA games are starting to overtake AAA?
Because I would say that AAA is putting the fatigue into people, where every time you hear about AAA release, your first thought is not about, oh, how great the game is going to be, how they're going to monetize it. Because even look at, it was a bit of a practice a few years ago when they put microtransaction stores into every single player game they could do. I think the biggest culprit of that is Middle Earth Shadow of War, where they literally put a loot boxes into single player game with a gacha mechanic for the orcs that would jump out of the box, and you can use them in your army. And they're like, yay, I think at some point they even, like, there was a developer who died during the process, and they put his name into some orc that jumps out of the loot box, and they're like, oh yeah, support us. We have a colleague that died, but now you can be in your army. It's as if he still lives. That was like the cringiest thing ever. You're like, no, why would I do that?
You know, we got to give them credit, though. They did take that out of the game eventually.
But after the outrage was so much that their sales were plummeting.
Yeah, but how many times does a developer backpedal on themselves and be like, oh, we actually made a huge mistake, and they take a step backwards and get rid of it?
I think starting the whole conundrum of Battlefront 2 with EA, where the governments got involved with the whole loot box thing and everything, that's where it kind of put a stop to it. I would say back in the day, as a kid growing up, like in high school, every time the new game would release from EA, Ubisoft, BioWare, you were excited because you don't know what they're going to bring you, right? Like, if audience remembers the original Prince of Persia back from 2003, I think, when it first came, it blew my mind. Like, I honestly remember skipping math just to play that. Then Prince of Persia 2, The Warrior Within came out, and I grinded that game for months just because I wanted to nail down the fighting mechanic, and I wanted to pass it on the highest difficulty while looking cool doing, not just like spamming
not just beating it, but beating it with style.
Exactly. So that's my comparison. Versus now, when they release a AAA game, my first thought is, how are they going to monetize it? if they're gonna monetize it. And there's like I'd say the biggest thing right now is this trying to make you buy the game before it's released with the pre-orders. That's why I keep saying to all my friends, to everyone I know, don't do pre-orders. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the marketing machine, because look at Cyberpunk. We mentioned Cyberpunk 2077. It was hyped to the world. I bought it too. My brother bought it. Like when we saw that the presentation of E3 of 2017, I looked at it. I'm like, oh my god, it's C Project Red. They cannot screw up.
They
on
can't
this.
do no wrong. They're G.
Exactly. And then when it released, the the disappointment that I felt, probably it's not a bad game, but disappointment when they and how they released it. I think it stayed even now, even though they fixed it and they're trying to be good boys now. It's still there with you. So, and the double A, they always try to survive. They always try to be like they always were in the shadow of triple A's because I would say like Focus Entertainment, Saber Interactive, all those companies, even though they got bought later by the conglomerates and they kind of like, yeah, you do your own thing, we just need to profit. Um, they always were in the shadow, and they were trying to dish out great games while staying in the shadow. That's why there's a niche amount of players, and I'm kind of joining them right now, where I see that those guys actually put the effort. The game is always released on time. They're not buggy. There's actually a good story. Like I would say the best example of recent games like that is Jagged Alliance 3 and Aliens Dark Descent. Because I would say Aliens Dark Descent and Alien Isolation is the best Aliens game I've played ever. Where Aliens Isolation is like a horror, first person horror story where you can't really defend yourself. And Aliens Descent is the original feel of Aliens movie, whereas it's a squad of Marines. It's a top down, I would say tactical strategy RPG style movement with the active pause. How many games right now do active pause where things are still moving, but it gives you time to assess the situation and do the right moves? And and that game promotes stealth and thinking versus, oh yeah, let me shoot every bug on the map. Because the difficulty, by doing that, you're ramping up your own difficulty by not trying to be stealthy.
I honestly think the difference between AA and AAA comes down to one word: passion.
That's a good one, actually.
And why do I say this? Because AAA is all about money. You really think there's passion in the new Call of Duty game that's going to come out this year, Modern Warfare 3? No, it's a cog in the money-making machine for Activision Blizzard.
Well, it's still Activision. The deal is like, yes, they're on the way there. It's not finalized yet, so let's call them Blizzard and Activision Blizzard.
No. It's that Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard. Right. Isn't finalized yet, but Activision Blizzard is already a conglomerate. But there's no passion in it, or even Diablo 4. Do you really think there was passion put into Diablo 4 or Diablo Immortal? Probably not. No. But there's games that are in like indie games. I love using Terraria for this. Terraria came out 10 years ago. They are still updating it and adding new content to the game. And you want to know how much you get billed for that new content every year? Nothing. You bought the game once. You get all the new updates and all the new content for free because that's passion. And you know what? That game still sells. It's still one of the top rated games on all of Steam because the development actually has passion for their project.
I would say on the topic of passion, I mentioned Vin Zampella, and I think he's one of the more passionate developers that we have right now because the guy we mentioned Titanfall 1 and 2, he created Apex, he created the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. And he's just that old school developer, like old school Blizzard, old school EA, back when they were doing, like, if everyone remembers, Command and Conquer, Red Alert 2, and all those games. And he's from that era. He cares about what he makes. It's just, I think he adapted to the modern AAA scene more, where he knows how to hook his management to like, hey, listen, I can make this work if you fund me and you give me like freedom of creation. And I think he proved it time and time again, because I don't want to say I'm excited or anything, but there's rumored that the next Battlefield game is completely under his wing, by EA saying what he did with Battlefield 2042 right now over a year, where he updated the maps. He kind of like polished it to a level that once again, the catchphrase is this is how it should have released, not 2 years ago where it was once again like unplayable mess, and they were like, oh yeah, do a pre-order for $100, right? And I believe in him, and that's what I want to say too. Passion is it's not in a studio; it's the people that are working it.
AAA's motto at this point is going to be, it'll be playable in 3 months.
Yes, but if core concept is good, people will see that. I would say the biggest problem with gaming audience is that we're all forgiven.
And here's the thing. We talked again. I'm going back to Cyberpunk. It seems to be a recurring thread. The core idea of Cyberpunk was good. It just wasn't ready. Obviously, now with 2 to 3 more years of development, they've released what they wanted to release. It's the same idea with all these other games. Give them more time. Stop rushing games out of development because you need the payday. Go, if you need the money, do early access. There's ways to do it now. Would you be offended if you saw a AAA game on early access? I wouldn't.
Especially if it's done right.
If it's done well and they actually put it out in like a somewhat playable spot to begin with, and then all of a sudden be like, okay, well, we did early access. We're going to take the feedback from early access and improve it. We're going to do it. Whereas a lot of the times, AAA games feel like they're released in early access, but you paid $90.
Yes. See, that kind of spirals into a different conversation. The way that I've read the Jason Schreier's report or his insight from CD Projekt Red when they made a big boo-boo with release of original 2077 is that they were saying there were crunches to release the final update for Witcher, the Blood and Wine, and a lot of people got burnt out and they left. And active creators of Witcher 3, which CD Projekt Red was hoping to stay and start a new project with Cyberpunk, they left. They got so overburned, they left. So their problem was it's the manpower they were lacking. Yet, marketing department kept on promoting the game full steam because that's their job. It's their job to get us hooked and spend the money, and then, oh yeah, because a lot of developers in that time, when they heard that the E3 2017 is like, oh yeah, it's coming in like a year and a half or something, like we're not ready.
You know, I could imagine that a lot of the game development crunch, which you hear so much about
Yeah.
and being such a problem, would really be less of an issue if they said you have an extra 3 months.
Yeah, well, what's 3 months when they basically have to live in the office to do it?
Well, but I'm saying, like, theoretically, you're crunching for 3 months to get there. So instead of it being 3, it's okay, you don't have 3 months, you have 6 months. All of a sudden, I think if they gave them a little more time, you could make it a lot better. Or that 3-month mark, here's early access.
Yeah, yes, but in that sense, I would say the management needs to do the final, like they need to talk to developers more than they need to talk to the marketing department, not other way around. You can't force something undoable within that time limit and calling it, oh yeah, we'll just release it how it is and just give them a roadmap.
I think the problem, again, it's all comes down to passion. And again, I think the big difference too between AA and AAA is AAA is all about the money. AA is all about putting out the product. It's if you make it good, people will come.
Yes, and actually, yeah, I would say the past few releases that I mentioned, the Aliens and Jagged Alliance, I think if you look at Steam store page of those, they're like 89s, 94s in the ratings, and a lot of like, oh yeah, great, we should have more of these. They don't look the greatest. Don't get me wrong. They're like they don't have the big and the best beautiful picture at all, but it's the gameplay that hooks you. I think the Terraria, that's what's great about it too. Is like I've seen some streams, like I just randomly clicked on one on Twitch. I'm like, not my thing, but people playing. Like you see thousands of viewerships. You're like, people watch this. Then I would say it's the gameplay, not the picture. Although I'm the biggest fan of like it needs to look good. Like,
But I think there's always going to be a point. Like there's, I've mentioned this to Justin when we were doing the sports episode.
yeah,
How good could you make a hockey game's graphics? They could only be so good. At what point do you have to say, I'm going to stop wasting my time making the game look half a percent better so that I can make the gameplay 10% better.
But like you said, it's a hockey game. How well of the process can you make it? I mean, yeah, if it was just I would say if it's just a console release, right? Only consoles with a dual shock on PS5, yeah, you can maybe feel the bump of the players when you bump into someone or someone like body checks you into the wall. But PC gaming scene, it's like, oh, okay, like I don't know how well can you do that. But then again, EA Games is the biggest offender in like using the outdated engines that are like 10, 15 years old and selling the games at the premium price with the microtransaction store.
Just one final question for you. At what point do you think AA games will overtake AAA if it hasn't already happened?
It's on its way there. I would say I closely follow Focus Entertainment and Saber Interactive and like what they do. I mean, Saber Interactive's World War Z games based on the movie and their technology for literally like hundreds of characters on the screen and them doing Space Marine 2 right now that looks incredible, but still you can consider it a double A. Like it didn't cross the threshold into a triple A scene. At least I feel so. I think they're catching up and they're catching up fast where they're giving you as a player just the experience. You start the game, the first thing you see is that there's no, oh, click here for a store to put your Space Marine to a different chapter's colors or something. Like if you don't want to play an Ultramarine or Smurf Marine, you want to play someone else. There's no store for that. And I hope there will be no store for that. At least they're saying, no, we're just giving you the experience. You just get into the game and you start slaying, and that's it. And that's where it's winning closely because people are tired of overpaying. Like, first of all, the games are not getting any cheaper. They're putting 1,000,001 reasons why. Oh, it's a $70 per game now. Soon, I'm pretty sure they're gonna say, oh, it's $80 per game, and people are gonna be fine with that because they're saying, oh yeah, the development is getting so much more expensive. Well, because obviously there's more professionals out there. They understand they're professionals.
And it is getting more expensive too. It's going up even in terms of inflation and how much people have to be paid.
That's exactly it. And I'm okay with that. If it's a great product, I'm okay paying for that. What I'm not okay with is that, oh yeah, buy a premium game and then spend more money in the store just because their big corporation needs more money. And that's where AA is winning in my eyes. Because I play that, it's like the old school feeling, the feeling from my childhood when you just log into the game and you enjoy it without any gotcha mechanics like, oh, this part of the game is too hard for you. It's like a mobile game. Run to our store, we'll make it easier for you. And you're like, no, like Shadow War. I never finished it because at some point it's like spend more money to buy more orcs, and you're like, I don't. What if I don't want to? The game is like, oh yeah, then grind for like 30 more hours to make that part of the game passable, and that's where it's winning. It's winning because you can just do it old school way, like old Doom 2, when you can just. It's too hard for you. Well, too bad. Make yourself better. Not buy gimmick to make yourself better, but be a better player. That's where it's winning. That's why it's AA games generally have overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam, and more people are going towards it.